All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us, whether you're live here in front of us or on Zoom. And some of you will be watching this in recording. My name is Robert Cruz with the Lutz and Cruz Group, powered by Place here at Keller Williams in Cupertino. That's a mouthful, but I got through it. So as we do, if this is your first time listening to us, every week on Thursday, we do an update on our real estate markets here in Silicon Valley, trying to get you up to speed, whether you're buying or selling or just thinking about it, or you're just interested in the market in general. We have a pretty unique approach to how we view the markets and how we talk about the markets. And I'm not going to try to convey everything we do in these 30 minutes or so, but I'm going to try to give you a really good synopsis of when someone asks us the question, myself or one of our team members, how's the market? Is it a good time to buy or sell? What's going on with real estate or the market in general? You'll get a sense, hopefully, after this meeting, where do we get our answers from? They're not canned responses. They're well thought out. They're well researched. We put a ton of time and effort into making sure we can give you a really smart, educated answer, because we understand how important it is that we get it right when you ask us a question like that. We don't take it for granted. We're really proud of what we do and how we do it. And this half hour is designed to share a little bit of that with you. Each week, the topics are a little different. I may focus on different things. And the market changes every week. So even though some of the numbers and topics we cover are the same, what's underlying and what's really going on in the market at any given time does change. So feel free to log in any Thursday that you like. When you can't make it, talk to whoever invited you, and they can always provide you with a recording. And you can even come and join us live. As a trainer, it's always better when there's live people. It's hard to teach to empty spaces, but I've done it before, so I can do it. I did on Tuesday morning, as a matter of fact. So with that, if you have any questions as I'm speaking, if you need clarification, go ahead and make a comment in the notes. Raise your hand virtually. It will try to spot it if we miss it, and especially if we miss it and you've written down your question, we can always follow back up. So let's start with this. I always like to start with constantly looking out for news or information around real estate. And I especially love it when something visual comes up that allows me to make a point or raise interest or awareness of what's going on in the market in general. And this is one that I saw just the other day. And it meets all those things. It's visual, it's easy to read, easy to see, and there's something that really stands out about it, right? In this case, it's talking about the existing home sales across the country and where we are. And this is from a great website that I follow. I recommend you follow it if you're interested in real estate and finance and things like that. I will warn you, this gentleman is extremely smart, wolfstreet.com, but he can tend to be a bit bearish. So if you don't like tough news or bad news, be forewarned. But I've followed him for years. He is very, very analytical, very smart. I appreciate that about him. And this is sourced from that. And the original source is National Association of Realtors, right? So what strikes me about it, right? There's no surprise they've gone in and circled it. And you can see this in spring of 2020, around this time 3 years ago, we had this massive drop in real estate activity. And it just shut off. Now we know why that happened. We know COVID hit, we shut down, everything was closed. And not only real estate, but everything had this immediate downward drop. And then, of course, you see it immediately shot back up. Once we figured out what was going on, once we found ways to safely interact and do things, we were back in the game. People were buying and selling again. Now, you can see that there was a massive drop, and the rebound wasn't back to where it was. It surpassed where we were. That's another striking part about this, right? Now, there's a reason for that. Our local or state or federal governments, our institutions were really worried about how is our economy going to react to this unknown COVID event. And in order to make sure that our economies were fine, we put a lot of liquidity into the system. We lowered interest rates. We facilitated the borrowing and spending of money to stimulate our economy. Now, like anything in life, hindsight's 2020. It's easy to say now, hey, we did too much. We made money too cheap. Inflation resulted from that. We're still dealing with that. And, you know, armchair quarterbacking is easy. Armchair quarterbacks are undefeated, right? And we're all armchair quarterbacks at some point in our life. So understand that. But what strikes me now is that rapid rise. The other thing that really stands out to me is how we've taken that drastic fall in the last 5 or 6 months. At the most recent part, the right edge of this graph, existing home sales have just cratered. They dropped to where we were in the beginning of COVID. And if you go even further back to the left, you see we are where we were at the depths of the great financial crisis in 2008 or 2009, right? So if you've been around as long as I have, in the context of real estate, I was working, I was in that market, I remember what it was like. And I can tell you, while the absolute numbers are about the same in terms of number of sales, right? The feeling and what's actually going on the ground is completely different, completely different. That doesn't mean it's easy for buyers or sellers. Still tough questions, still a lot of unknowns. And it's certainly not easy for practitioners, for realtors like us, because we have to deal with those unknowns too. But we'll start at that. Don't ever ignore or reject the obvious. Whenever you see massive moves up or down in any industry, in any arena, there's some really important things that are happening to cause that, whether it's up or down, right? We know why that initial drop was in spring of 2020. We shut down. We now know why did it rise so far and so fast. We put tons of liquidity into the system to spur buying. And we listened. We bought and we bought and we bought and we bought, and we haven't stopped. That spurred inflation. And now we're to the point where the Federal Reserve and others are trying to stop that. How do you stop runaway inflation? The number one tool is, well, then make money more expensive. Make it painful to spend. And so what happened around April, May of last year, we started an aggressive push to raise interest rates, make money more expensive. And the idea was like, well, look, they're buying homes with 3% interest rates, and they're paying 100, 200, 300K over asking price, and they'll buy anything in their sight. And that's what created that jump. But what happens if you double the cost of money? What if you raise the interest rate from 3 to 7%? Well, now we know we stop buying, right? Now, mind you, that line does not go to zero, right? If you're not paying close attention, did sales crater? Yes, 30, 35, 40% drops year over year in many places, including Silicon Valley. But it didn't go to zero. There were still people transacting. There were still people selling, still people buying. The prices didn't fall immediately, even though the interest rate did. Prices and values of home kept rising and rising and rising. And that did pull a lot of buyers out of the market, but there was still plenty of buyers to continue the pace, right? So Amy Dixon, DFW Housing Economic Analyst, writes below this about this chart. The Fed has a huge problem on their hands with housing. Last time market activity crashed with low inventory was spring 2020. The way out was to stimulate demand. Now market activity has crashed again, but their hands are tied. What she's implying there is like, because of inflation, they can't just lower interest rates again to push demand. Now, there's a couple of implications in here. First, he uses the word crash, right? Having lived through 2008 in this industry, this is not a crash. Last quarter wasn't, last year wasn't. What we're experiencing right now is not a crash. I've been in a crash. I know it when I feel it, right? Take that for what it's worth. But I would argue with the use of that term crash. Second, what else is implied, right? The way out was to stimulate demand. At the time, it felt that's what we needed. Again, hindsight 2020, stimulus was needed, but we can argue not that much, right? But what's done is done. It's there. Now market activity has crashed again. Again, I would argue against the use of that term. If you're a homeowner, your property values are still at some of the highest levels in the history of Silicon Valley real estate. How is that a crash? If the asset you own has reached peak value, and if it has moved at all, it's only moved 3 or 4 or 5% from the peak, there's no context in where that's a crash, right? And despite the prices, despite the values, buyers are still buying. We'll talk about that in a second, right? But then she further says the Fed's hands are tied. What's implied there is because of inflation, we cannot drop interest rates to spur that demand. So where will the demand come from? That implies that we need more demand. And that's going to be an incredibly important point going forward, right? If we maintain or grow demand and we keep inventory at current levels, at worst, we'll maintain current prices. If we get to the point where a lot of people start to list their properties and we put a glut of properties on the market, well, then that could cause a crash, right? So it's kind of be careful what you wish for. As homeowners, if you're thinking of buying or selling, those are ideas and thoughts that should play a role in your decision making. Now, you probably don't read 3 or 4 hours of real estate news every day like I do. I'm glad you don't, because that allows me to have a job, right? But what I hope is again, not showing you all we do, but in a second show you how we take that research, how we take that analysis to factor all these things. So again, when you ask, is this a good time to buy? Is this a good time to sell? Is that a good value? What's going to happen next? We look and study these things so that we can answer those questions, right? So I want to start with that beautiful image for a real estate nerd like me. Only I would say that's a beautiful image. I get it. But so much packed in there, so much packed in there. When we unpack it, then we start to answer your personal question about your personal situation, your personal property, what's going on in the market relative to your wants and needs, all right? So another important graphic, right? Pending sales by region year over year. Here we are in the West, 28% down year over year. Again, indulge me a little bit, right? This is a big number. When you study numbers, when you study trends like me, anytime you see something big, you got to pay attention. Why are sales down this far, this much in our region? That starts to answer those questions, right? So now we're going to dig right into our backyard, Santa Clara County. Those are nationwide numbers. That's what's going on everywhere, right? But you never buy or sell a house based on what's the national economy doing, what the state, what the region, what the area. It gets down to your street. And that's what we'll try to share today. So here's my first graph, one of my favorites. What you're looking at here is Santa Clara County, single family residences only, no condos, townhomes, make that clear. And we're looking back around the last 15 months, and we're looking at two things. One is days on market. How long does it take to sell on average a house in our market? So from the time you list it to the time it's taken off the market and purchased, how long? You can see going back to December 2021, 18 days, 14 days, 15 days, 11, 10, 11. Incredibly fast moving markets, really, really fast. Now, again, you don't study real estate every day like we do. That is supersonic, right? Historically, we measure movement of sales and days on market in months, not weeks or days in our case. So imagine that context. If we're usually thinking about define a hot market is a market where properties or the available properties are taking 3 months to sell out, right? 3 months or less. We're nowhere near that. At its peak in January, 11 days, 10 days gone. Property on the market's gone, right? Now, above it, you see the sales price to original list price ratio. And you will see the curve, again, starting December 21st, 9% over asking price, 11%, 15%, 16% over asking price. This is when you read the headlines. Open houses are full, they're packed, 30 offers for property, $200,000, $300,000 over asking price. This visual is what reflects that kind of movement in our markets. Now, I'll have you note, when you see days on market speed up, take less and less time to sell available inventory, you get the natural push up on prices. the days decline, sales price ratios climb. I just made it rhyme. That's pretty good. I didn't even know it. Now, in May, I made one person laugh. That's good. In May, this is when we saw interest rates are going to go up. We can't afford as a society to have properties with that much over asking price and pushing prices higher and higher and higher. Let's make it hard. Let's make it expensive. Let's take that 3% that we're offering you to finance your home purchase and let's push it at 7%. And what happened? The first thing you can literally see buyers and leads say, whoa, wait a minute, let me think about this. Right? And they start taking 14, 22, 25, 28, 29 days. Again, historically, that is very, very fast. But I guarantee you, if you were selling a house in April, May, or June of last year, it did not feel fast, did it? If the realtors that are shaking their heads, if you were trying to sell houses in the market, it wasn't going fast. You're like, what are you talking about, Robert? That was not fast. That was like the brutal, angst-filled days of it hasn't sold, what's going on, right? And above it, you see the days on market rose, the average list to sales price ratio dropped, right? So again, this is a big picture view. Generally speaking, when you want to know what's going on in the market, again, you're thinking of buying or selling, look at this. If the days on market is going up, it doesn't even matter what the number is. Is it more than last month? Is it more than 2 months ago? If the answer is yes and yes, the odds are that the push on prices is getting lower. If the market's moving faster and faster and they're selling in days and weeks, then you can already think, my expectation should be that the pressure on prices will be higher. That still doesn't tell you what your house will sell for or what you should offer if you like a house in the market, but it should give you the temperature, right? What are you getting into? And you can see it does, while it moves fast in the individual, the trend takes weeks and months. So if you come to us today and you're like, how's the market? Are you thinking of buying or selling? I'm thinking of selling. Well, let's look. That's month to date, days on market in March. Now you should notice a couple things. Not that it's a different color. That's just because I'm colorblind, so I couldn't match the exact color. That's a true story. But the sudden drop, you see, it's usually gradual. It's rare that there's such a big drop from 36 to 25 days, right? 10-day difference, what's that? Well, that's a 33% drop in 30 days. I should immediately tell you the market's hot. The market's moving fast, right? You already had the upward curve of list to sales price ratios. How do you think that will affect it when this number comes out at the end of March? Right? It should be higher. If you're out buying houses, you should expect to be paying more than the seller's asking for it, right? So please understand when you say, Robert, I like that house. What should I offer? More than they want, right? I'm not being greedy. I'm not just a salesperson. We're analysts and we watch this and we monitor this and we pay attention. We can give you good advice because there's nothing worse than you love that house and I don't give you a number that will win. I understand you want a value and you want a bargain. Everybody does. But the true bargain in markets like this is getting it before it goes higher. That's what I've learned in 20 years of doing this, right? So we start at this level, right? This is immediate. This is speeding up. This is the market we're in. Now, I'll tell you, this is up to yesterday. Next Thursday, I will be right here. I might have a completely different story. Our markets can move that fast. When we're moving inventory in 15, 20-day intervals, then that's how fast the next cycle can start. And if interest rates go up, if some national or international event happens and erodes confidence of the consumer, then I can tell you a completely different story in 7 days' time. That's why I'll wake up on Monday morning and I'll download the numbers and I'll crunch it, I'll do the analysis, and I'll show up Thursday and say, this is what I said last week, this is the data this week, right? That's how up to date we are with you when you ask us what's going on, right? We spoke to a gentleman this morning, tried to sell his house last summer in around April and May, and he goes, didn't get the price I wanted, right? And I didn't tell him you hired the wrong realtor. Like, wasn't the market to get the number you wanted? It's that simple, right? So we always want you to put you in the best position possible to make decisions, right? I know for a fact in November and December, when sellers were asking us about selling, we said, wait. When should we wait? February, March. Why? Because that's when the buyers will come back. That's when the demand will be elevated and you'll maximize the value of your property. I always say, I would love to say I'm the reason, my agents are the reason we'll get you top dollar, right? Because that would be a really cool marketing piece, right? But the truth is, we do the best we can in the market we're in. And so the market always delivers the greatest value. So we have to lead with that. If this is your time to sell or buy, first analyze what's the market doing, what will the market deliver? That's the heavy lifter. We will do our job, right? We'll get you that last 2 or 3% on our efforts, on our contacts, on our ability to market and sell. So it's not unimportant. It is very important. And at our prices, 2 or 3% is well worth it. We're talking $50,000 to $100,000. But I think as a consumer, you should understand we play a role, but there's so many other things injected into the market that are the true drivers of what can you actually achieve. That's why we start here, right? Let me take a quick look. No comments or questions. I can keep going. All right. So now we're gonna go really fast. Like, I don't expect you to memorize everything I'm gonna say. More, I want you to kind of get, this is what we do every single time, every single week. When we're thinking of selling a property, we will sit with you in your property. This is all of a county. If you live in a certain neighborhood, in a certain part of the county, we will drill down to just your neighborhood, right? So this kind of analysis is what we'll do for you, buyer or seller, right? And so I look at things like this. What have we been through? We can see number of listings from January to February grew. It's supposed to, right? New listings jumped up. You don't know this, but for the last 5 months, new listings were down consistently. That's a bad thing in our market, right? So what that tells me, sellers were paying attention. Sellers are saying buyers are back. Let me put the house on the market. And they responded. We purchased them. Put it on the market, we'll buy it. And you can see the pending jumped dramatically, 77%. Why is that important? Pendings are a forward-looking number. When you see a big jump from January to February like that, that pending will close in March, maybe even April. So when you see this big push of buyers jumping into a market with very little inventory, the push on prices is going to be dramatic. What does that mean? If you're buying, right, you'd rather buy before that number is published, because then the next seller will use that as a comparable. If you're like, I can wait 30 to 60 days, you certainly can, but that price may move up 2 or 3 or 4%, right? Average prices are north of $1.5 million in our market. You're talking some real money. You're talking $70,000, $80,000. Now, you should never buy before you're ready, but you should have that information to make a real valuable decision. Is it worth it to speed up your search, right? The answer might be yes, the answer might be no. We accept whatever answer you have. Our job is to make sure you're armed with this kind of information. If you're a seller, how long is this going to last, right? This looks good for me. If it was good in January and better in February, wouldn't March or April be even better? Potentially, right? But again, 20-day cycles, 18-day cycles. You might be in a neighborhood where it's selling in 8-day cycles, right? If that's your neighborhood, I would say you got to do an analysis every week. Can you wait longer? Will you miss the peak, right? Or can you ride it much higher? It's never a wrong answer when you work with us. As long as we feel we've given you the information you need to make the decisions that are best for you and your family and the outcome you want to achieve. Because we do that deep level of analysis, we feel comfortable when you tell us yes. We're happy when you tell us no, right? Why? Well, you get paid when we do a transaction. Why is no okay? Because we did our first job. Our first job is to advise you. Our first job and our highest duty is to give you the information you need. And if when we do that, if the answer is I shouldn't sell, we did our job, right? So we always want to make sure that you understand that's the level of commitment and work that we do as realtors when we're talking to you about your wants and needs. So now let me show you something. I've been leading to, this is how fast it moves, right? January and February data, it's out, it looks great. Buyers are out in force. More properties are coming to market. If that pending is a leading indicator, March should be even better, right? Yes. Here's March month to date. For sale, new listing, sold are the same. Look at that pending number. Let me go back. February was up 77% from January. It's supposed to go up. March is supposed to go up too. It dropped 2%. That's how fast our markets move. 20, 25, 30-day cycles. This is not bad. This is not like the sky is falling, right? But it should give you pause. Again, timing is so important in real estate. Our markets move in certain patterns. When you start to understand those patterns and you can analyze and read that, it can make all the difference. Do you go to market today or in 30 days? If you're thinking about in June, does it make sense to do it in April? Again, we don't dictate the answer. We provide the information so that whatever your response is, it's with that full knowledge, right? And it could be the case like, wow, it would be so much better if I sold in April, but I'm not ready, right? What if you're not ready and you wait till June and the market slows down? Well, guess what? Instead of being up 200% since you bought it 8 years ago, you're only going to be up 198%. You're still fine. You still made a fantastic move. Always do what's best for you and your family. Easy for me to say, right? But again, our comfort is when we feel we've given you that kind of deep knowledge of available information to make the best decisions. And we roll with that, right? So going a little deeper, here's my favorite of all graphics, my favorite statistic. If I had like a little pet statistic, it would be absorption rate of pending sales, right? Let me explain why. Commonly, when we're talking about real estate markets, we talk about days on market or how many months would it take to sell inventory. In my opinion, and a lot of people disagree with me, that's old, outdated information. Why? Again, those things are measuring in quarters, in 3 and 6 and 9 month intervals. When our markets move in 8, 9, 10, 15 days, I can't wait for you to tell me what's the 9 month number look like, right? We could be up 50, 60, 70, or we could be down 50, 60, 70, $100,000. That's real money, right? And so absorption rate measures simply of what is available to sell. How fast will the buyers take it off the market? The number available doesn't matter. If there's 30 days in a month and there's 30 properties available for sale and we sell all of them, that's 100% absorption rate. If we sell all of them by the 15th, that's a 200% absorption rate. If we only sell half of them by the end of the month, that's a 50% absorption rate, right? So anything above 33% is considered a seller's market, right? So with that in mind, look where we've been. 292%, 215. Even when we were down to that May, June period, we were well above a seller's market. It hurt me as a data guy to see people dropping prices after a week or 2 weeks in that time period, right? They weren't looking at forward data. They're like, it's supposed to sell in a week. It didn't drop the price. No, it's now taking 30 days to sell. Don't drop the price, the buyer will come. They came even faster when you dropped the price, didn't it? Right? So not to rehash what's been on in the past, this is to look at what we're looking at in the future. So when you talk to us, we're going to talk to you about absorption rate, buyer or seller. And it's going to give you the really good example of what's going on. And here's another part of this is not just for any sale. This is for pending sales, right? Very few properties in our market right now, when they go in contract, fall out. It means they close, right? So when you're measuring how fast do we absorb what's on the market, and I can look at how many go off today, they won't close for another 15 to 20 or 30 or 40 days, right? So something sells today, it will close at the end of next month. It will report it as a sell the following month. So you cannot afford to wait until June to figure out what happened today when the cycles move this fast. So when we look at absorption rate, I'm telling you, this is what's going on. That's a good number in January. And it jumped to 114, almost doubled in 30 days. Those in February will close this month. They'll be reported next month. And some people are like, oh, the market's back. It's been here. It's been going hot for a while, right? And what you're really asking me, what's it going to be like in 30 or 40 or 60 days when I decide to buy or sell, right? So like I showed you the other one, let me show you March up to yesterday. 106%. That's a great number, but it's lower than last month, isn't it? We're not supposed to peak this early. We're supposed to peak in May and June. It's only 1 week. It's only one reading. But my agents will tell you, I've been warning them. The market started to heat up in November. And let's see how much runway it has. We usually don't have selling seasons that last longer than 4 or 5 months, right? They usually start in February and go through May, end of June. So if you started in November, the historical trends, you should expect it to peak sooner. So what does that mean for you as a buyer or seller? Again, it may mean nothing. You may be tied into timing. We understand that. We would still advise you on what you're looking at. But whenever you have the ability to look at data like this, to create opportunities, because you understand the market at a deeper level, we want you to have that opportunity, right? So am I telling you that the market's going to look bad next month? No, this is a great number, but I am telling you it's slowing down. 65 to 114, down to 106, right? Now, where does the rubber hit the road? What are you actually having to pay if you're buying? What are you receiving if you're selling? So we look at this. Remember this chart again, days on market list to sales price ratio. When you look at the absorption rate in any given market, it's a leading indicator. If that absorption rate is rising, you should expect the prices in that area to rise in the following weeks and months. If the absorption rate is falling, the pressure on prices will lessen. It doesn't always mean the price will drop, but you maybe don't have to go way over asking price, or maybe you don't have to give away conditions. You can keep some of the safety of that kind of term when making offers. So what have we seen? We saw in December that continuation of that trend of the sellers not getting what they were asking for that started around April or May of last year and continued all the way down, hit its lowest point in November and December, which is traditionally normal. And it popped up. Look how fast it popped up from January to February, a 5% jump in 30 days. Median price 1.8. You probably have an iPhone in front of you. You can do the policy calculator and do the math. It's a lot of money. I would love to be the realtor that saved you that because you bought early, or the one that made you that because I said, let's wait 30 days to list it, right? Now, December, January, you see combined days on market, sold to list price ratio. You had that massive jump. You know what's next, right? Month to date. Who wants to take a guess? If you're here this morning, you can't guess. See, when I ask you to guess, they're like, it's going to be lower. No, this is a trailing number. I've been showing you leading indicators. The actual sell price is a trailing number. These properties closed 30 days ago. So when the jump started, it's still chugging along. It's not paying attention to the absorption rate. Once the absorption rate starts to tail off, the closings lag and they still keep going up. It's an easy place to misread the market, but it's why I put these numbers together. Let's look at the leading indicators to give you the advice you're looking for on, is it a good time to buy or sell? Let's look at the lag indicators, because that's what the market will read. See, not everybody looks at this leading information. Majority of realtors will look at, well, let's look what happened. Oh, this is what happened in January. Well, it's April, or will soon be, right? That's how we're classically trained, to look at these lagging numbers to know what the market is. When markets moved in quarters, in 6 and 9 month indicators, that was perfectly valid. That was accurate. Well, sure, you can look at what happened in January and February, and it'll tell you what's likely going to happen in March and April. But that's why I started with that first thing. Look at the days on market. Look how fast we move. Speed of market, I call it. How fast are we moving? How quickly are we cycling through the houses that are available to sell? 5 days, 10 days, up or down, can make a massive difference. And that's why we read it like this. So when you come to us, when you ask us those questions, how's the market? When you're saying, I'm thinking of buying, I'm thinking of selling, this is the analysis we put into it. You look at the houses you're looking for, the markets you're looking for, and we'll tailor these numbers to that area. Wherever your houses you're thinking of selling, we'll drill down into that area. Here's what's happening here. Right? I won't have time today. Maybe I'll dig into it again next week. But when you get that, there's a lot of other different things. What condition of the property, price point of the property, each one of those different factors can create positives or negatives on the value of your home. So I promise to try to keep it to 30 minutes. I know you all have important things to do. You're probably hungry. So I went 5 minutes over. I'm happy you indulge me. But again, not designed for you to memorize or to immediately understand. If you did, that's awesome. But it's designed to encourage you to reach out to, again, to whoever invited you or to anyone on the team when you have a real estate question. This is the depth that we go to help you understand when we say, this is what I think the value of your property is. This is what I think you should pay if you like that property, right? Make those big multi-million-dollar decisions that every choice can create or erode tens of thousands of dollars in value. I would think you would want this kind of depth of analysis. And again, I thank you for listening. Again, whether you're here in person, on Zoom, or watching this later. Any question you have on real estate in Silicon Valley, we have incredible realtors. They come and train every single day. They had a rough one this morning. I could turn the camera on and they would tell you. I'm a good coach, and sometimes good coaches can get into the students, right? But they took it with good heart. I told them there's things to be worried about. There's things to take care of, and people are going to be worried. They're going to have tough questions, and we owe it to them to be prepared to answer them. So hope I did a little bit of that tonight. If you need more, reach out, and we're happy to give you some help. Is there a question? Oh, there's a question in chat. All right. I have some clients telling me that they are waiting for housing prices to drop. What's your opinion? All right. I get that question a lot. People waiting for prices to drop. This is going to sound harsh. The client that's been waiting for prices to drop has been waiting since 2011. Prices have been rising since 2012. And with that much data in hand, what do you think my response is when I say people are waiting for prices to drop? In general, they're not. Now, there's an important caveat. I mentioned that I might talk about this in another meeting. There are value opportunities in the market, right? There are value opportunities. When I discuss different price zones, different conditions of the houses, there's incredible opportunity there. But if you're just, I'm waiting for overall prices to drop, you're going to miss a ton of opportunity, right? So that I can say that forcefully because I look at the numbers. Not last week, not last month, the last 20 years. This is what I do, right? I may be wrong, but it's going to be against a ton of evidence that I'm wrong, right? So hope that answered that question. So with that, I wish you good night. And once again, if you need help, you need guidance, reach out. We'd love to talk to you.